This is the most significant vote that any of us will ever be part of.
This is a catastrophic defeat for this government.
The greatest for more than 100 years.
Humiliating defeat for the government.
What are you playing at? What are you doing? You are not children in the playground. You are legislators.
The government must surely have seen the inevitable coming.
Scotland, the European Union is more popular in the polls than the United Kingdom, and the Prime Minister should know that.
It is clear that the House does not support this deal, but tonight's vote tells us nothing about what it does support.
I have now tabled a motion of no confidence in this government.
And while MPs were voting inside, hundreds of people from both the pro-EU and pro-Brexit camps gathered outside the Houses of Parliament, plunging the area into a cacophony of chants.
Brexit's rubbish and we want it gone! Brexit alive!
Police deployed extra forces to the area, but the atmosphere remained calm and peaceful. The majority of people on both sides wanted May's deal to be voted down. No-deal Brexiteers were hoping the vote would start the Brexit ball finally rolling, while many Remainers had their fingers crossed it would trigger a second referendum.
I believe we should just walk away from Europe now.
And just because you voted once doesn't mean you can't reflect and have maybe more options. It was binary last time.
I think that people have the right to change their minds and that most people don't support Brexit anymore.
Promises broken, politicians lying routinely.
They've betrayed Britain, they're betraying the future of Britain, and our government do not speak for us.
People were promised all sorts of things in 2016 which have not been delivered, which were incapable of being delivered by the Leavers.
Now to RT's Charlotte Dubinsky joining me live to discuss how Europe has been reacting to the vote. So Charlotte, what are we hearing from the EU?
Well, EU leaders have long lamented that vote in the referendum back in 2016 for the UK to leave the European Union. That's something they didn't want to happen. And while they've been negotiating for the past 2 years for this deal, now that deal has been outright rejected by the British Parliament. We're seeing EU leaders show their true colours, suggesting possibly that there could be a second referendum and that the UK could remain part of the Union. Some details coming out from Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, her reaction to that, saying that there is still time for talks, and she's urging clarification from the United Kingdom. Also heard from the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, who tweeted about this, again saying he rejected the fact that that deal had been outright rejected by the British Parliament, and he was also urging that clarification as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Donald Tusk, who is the President of the European Council, went even further than that, suggesting that it was only one positive solution, and that would be, of course, a second referendum and remaining as part of the European Union. Now, leaders in Europe have long been fairly unhappy with the ins and outs, the toing and froing from the United Kingdom, the indecision, so much to the point that we've seen leaders in Italy and France sort of pretty much shrugging their shoulders and saying it's the Brits again. And now they're putting their own interests first and essentially have been showing the UK the cold shoulder.
Donc dans ce contexte-là, ils vont devoir.
The UK is heading towards a no deal despite there being no agreement. It scares everybody. The first losers of this are the British people. Maybe we can improve on 1 or 2 points. I don't really believe that, because we went as far as we could in the existing agreement. And, just in order to try and solve a problem of British internal politics, we won't not defend the interests of Europeans.
Well, the plenary session is taking place currently in the European Union Parliament. It's being led by people, of course, talking about Brexit. They might have been hoping that they could have been dotting the I's and crossing the T's on this deal today, but not so. It looks like it's back to the drawing board. And in fact, there are warnings now that a high-risk no deal is a very likely outcome.
The risk of a no deal has never seemed so high. Our goal is to avoid such a scenario, but we also have a responsibility to remain clear-headed, which is why we will intensify our efforts to be prepared for this possibility.
Well, many voices are now suggesting that a second referendum is a very realistic possibility, but Brexiteers are warning that if a second referendum takes place, it might produce the same result, but actually with a larger majority for leave.
We don't know yet what they do.
If the betrayal becomes complete and we are forced to vote in a second referendum, you may be in for a big surprise. The British may be a very placid people, very laid back, but I promise you, if they get pushed too far, it's a lion that will roar. We will be even more defiant if we have to fight a second referendum, and we'll win it by a bigger majority.
Well, besides her parliamentary trouncing, Theresa May has another headache. She's now facing a vote of no confidence. RT's Polly Boyko now assessing the possible outcomes.
The deal is in tatters, and it looks like in relation to the Brexit agreement, it's back to square one for Theresa May. There is a rather more pressing issue for her now, and that is that she's got to see off another leadership challenge. Now, this time, it's the leader of the opposition party, Labour, Jeremy Corbyn. Immediately after Theresa May lost her Brexit vote, he said that he tabled a motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister. So for the entire day, they're going to be debating whether they've got confidence in Theresa May's leadership, and at the end of the day, it will be put to a vote. Now, it looks as though Theresa May will be able to see off this leadership challenge. Of course, many viewers will remember that she managed to see off the leadership challenge from within her own party just at the end of last year. So it's expected that all her own Conservative politicians will support her, otherwise they'll risk a Labour government, which is something that, despite all their disagreements, they can all agree that they don't want. And also the Democratic Unionist Party of Northern Ireland, which supports Theresa May. They have a confidence and supply agreement in Parliament. They have also said that they will support Theresa May in that vote. So she will then need to get back to the issue of salvaging this Brexit deal. And at the same time, a lot of other forces are coming into play.
Professor at the London School of Economics, Alan Sked, and writer and broadcaster Jonathan Fryer, they both think the future of Brexit is very uncertain.
It is a muddle, it is a fiasco. It's all largely the Prime Minister's fault, since she's deliberately gone ahead with a plan which for months everybody knew wasn't going to work, and now she's faced with the consequences. But it'll take a couple of weeks before the atmosphere clears up and we've got any indication at all of where we're likely to go. Her deal was very unpopular among the British people. Opinion polls gave it about 20% support. 80% of the 70-80% of the country were against it.
The big question, really, which has to be answered, is not about Theresa May. The big question is, what is the Labour Party going to do? Because Jeremy Corbyn has been very ambiguous about actually what the Labour position is. He has suggested repeatedly that he could bring about a Labour Brexit that would be good for jobs and good for everybody, despite the fact that the EU said there are not going to be another deal. So it will be very interesting to see if he changes his mind on that.